Hello and welcome to Coaching for Realtors being Tip of the Day here on Periscope. I'm Deborah Ivanoff, the Being Coach, joining you each day with tools, tips, and tricks to help you work less and accomplish more by aligning your inner being with the actions you take. And good morning. And this morning, what I'd like to talk to you about is untying the knots of the tangles in your life. I'm wondering if any of you have experienced those moments in time where things seem to be going well in your business, and yet there's things in your personal life or things in your inner world that are just really bugging you. And sometimes they can seem like they're all tangled up. And sometimes they can seem like different areas that are tangled up. Maybe a relationship, something that's going on inside of you, some of the thoughts that you've got going on, maybe some things in your business on the outside, legal things or deadlines or money things. And they all seem to be tangled up just into this big giant ball of doesn't feel good and I don't want to deal with it. I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to deal with it. And you feel that reluctance or that avoidance to deal with it. So remember yesterday we talked about momentum, and we talked about how a top will run forever except for what? Resistance. Resistance is what slows it down. Well, that same thing, actually, interestingly enough, is what happens when we're experiencing that reluctance to do things. That's creating a resistance. It's slowing us down. Those tangles, maybe personal issues, maybe financial issues, maybe character issues, like I'm someone who can't show up on time, or I'm not keeping my agreements. All those things can be tangled up. So here's the thing I want to say to you, I don't want you to blame or shame yourself in any way. These things are what I call strategies. We're doing them for a reason. We just don't know what the reason is. So we're going through life like this. No. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. And what happens is those knots and tangles continue to pull more knots and tangles and more knots and tangles. In fact, you've probably noticed this. The crazier and stickier things get, the kind of crazier and stickier things get. Yeah. And so what we want to do is we want to begin to release some of those tangles on the outside. And each tangle that we resolve, we confront, we resolve, we deal with as neutrally and kindly and compassionately as possible, whether it's with ourselves, that may be a belief or an idea that we have that is no longer helpful to us, or maybe it's never been too much helpful to us, but there's a reason it's there. Or if it's a tangle that we have with another person, and we know this, we know that when we actually settle down and we deal with the things that we need to deal with people, that ultimately that leads to a feeling of more closeness. We feel better when we resolve our, quote, issues. Yes? It can be tricky when we have attracted so many little tangles and we have this big giant tangly ball because it seems overwhelming. And then we habitually resist or are reluctant or don't want to have anything to do with. Yes? And I'm guessing you've experienced that. I know I certainly have experienced that in my life. So what do we do? Yeah, what do we do? So what we do is we take care of the knot that's in front of us, the tangle, the knot, the uncomfortability, the situation that we don't want to deal with. But what is the one that's right in front of us? And that can be done in a number of ways. I suggest you think of the way that has best helped you in the past. If you have a communication tool to use with another person or even with yourself, if you can use what I call power questions, which are questions in the present that are what questions, what needs to happen, how can this be helped, what is something that I can do today, or an I wonder question, I wonder how I could resolve this. That'll give your brain something to do. So asking yourself a question and putting that in your mind that that's something that's going to be resolved rather than unresolved. Sometimes it's actually taking care of an action like writing a letter or an email or calling a person on the phone. But here's an extra tip, and that is if you can do that action, that physical action in the world, if you can do that action, but internally hold the energy of what you want. So by that I mean, if I have to write a letter to someone about a legal matter, if I can see in my mind's eye that matter being resolved for the highest good of all, if I can feel in my heart my dedication and my commitment to that being resolved in the best way for all, then that letter is going to have a different energy, isn't it? It's going to have the intention of my wanting to not explode the problem, but to resolve in as neutrally as possible the problem. Now, of course, an advanced way to work with this is to deal with the belief or the idea or the habitual way of thinking that created the issue in the first place. Yeah, and that's the inner work. But when we do our inner work, then circumstances in the outer world seem to change magically. When you hear people talking about things magically happening, that's because we've done our work on the inside. So that's your tip for the day. Your tip for the day is to not be afraid of those big tangly messes, or go ahead, be afraid of them and confront them anyway. Shine the light on them. And if you need help, get a trusted friend, advisor, coach, consultant, mentor, clergy, someone, counselor, someone who can really help you with that so that you don't have to do it alone. Because oftentimes what we have been doing, saying, seeing, feeling is what created the problem in the first place. So getting that objective eye, trusted eye, can really help you with that. Okay, that's my tip for the day about untying and untangling the knots in our life, remembering that the more you untangle, the more that begin to come loose on their own, and the way smooths out, and we get back into the flow, and we get back to momentum. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been Deborah Ivanoff, the Being Coach, with your Periscope tip of the day for coaches and other entrepreneurs. And I will sign off reminding you that it's not just about what you do, it's about who you are being as you take the action. All right, everybody. Bye for now.